Hello! We're going to get going here by reading Chapter 10 of The People of Sparks. How exciting. With some relaxing music in the background. What a bonus. I'm going to turn it down a bit. Okay, if you have not yet watched Chapter 9, you should pause this video right now, search through, find Chapter 9 of Sparks, and watch that first, then come back. Before we get going, I'm going to show you what your assignment's going to be for this chapter. So I have posted on Google Classroom the next assignment that you need to do. Every time that we do a chapter of Sparks, you are going to get into the slideshow I've shared with you. So it's right here, it's on your stream, it's also in classwork under language arts, but at the top right here, it's under stream. You can just click into it. Well, yours will look different, of course. It'll look like this though. The slideshow, this will be the title. This will never change. People of Sparks with your name. And then each new chapter, you're going to create a new slide, put the chapter number at the top. Chapter number at the top. And then you will write about whatever I ask you to write about. Today, in chapter 10, you're simply going to write down the most important parts from the chapter and any connection that you have to this chapter or to something that happened in the chapter. So connection, something in your life, something it made you think about, or something from the first book. So those are your jobs today after you listen to the chapter, is these two things. Once again, these are in your Google Classroom under stream. The very first thing that pops up, I've created a slideshow for everybody, so you can use that if you want to change what it looks like or the background, that kind of thing. That's totally fine. We're going to keep this slideshow going every chapter till the end. Let's get to the book. So in chapter 9, now that you've all listened to it, in chapter 9, you will have remembered that at the end of it, it is super, super awkward. The people of Ember are in the houses having lunches with the people of Sparks, and the people of Ember are getting frustrated with the lack of food they're getting, and the people of Sparks are upset that they're upset, and it's just a whole lot of awkward. People are mad, people are frustrated. Let's read the last paragraph together. We're going to be starting down here. Everyone else must have been thinking the same thing. They finished their soup in silence. At the end of the meal, Martha dumped the food parcels on the table instead of handing them out. They each took one, but Dune's father was the only person who said thank you. Later, when Dune opened his parcel, he found a wedge of cabbage leaves turning yellow at the edges and a hunk of some sort of bean cake. His stomach clenched. They're tired of helping us, he thought. What are we going to do? So, and again, remember, all the people of Sparks had these conversations. You can only imagine the awkwardness at each person of the people of Sparks' houses as the Emberites are bringing up these issues they're having. And hopefully, some of you commented what you would have felt like sitting at that dinner table. How awkward it would have been. All right, chapter 10. Restless weeks. Poppy was now almost well. She still slept more than usual, but when she wasn't sleeping, she tromped around the doctor's house, pulling spoons off the table and spilling cups of water and crumpling pages of books. That is, she was almost her old self. So Lina often asked Mrs. Murdo if it wasn't time for them to go and live with the others at the Pioneer Hotel. Mrs. Murdo always said she wasn't quite ready. They'd wait until the brother came, she said. Lina had a feeling the real reason was that she liked helping the doctor. She was always poring over the doctor's big medicine books and helping her pick her herbs and mix her remedies, so they stayed on. And Lina worked for the doctor. It wasn't that she didn't like working, but in Ember, she'd had an adventurous job, an important job. She'd run with her messages all over the city, running the way she loved to run, so fast she almost flew. It was hard for her to stay in one place all day. She felt restless and bored. I wonder if some of you are coming up with a connection for that part right now. Think about it. Explain it to yourself. It was hard for her to stay in one place all day. She felt restless and bored. She did a huge amount of cooking. Well, not cooking exactly, since the doctor rarely wanted to bother making a fire in the stove. But chopping and peeling and slicing and mixing. She wiped up spilled medicines and herbal solutions from the counter. She swept dirt from the floor. She pulled down cobwebs from the ceilings. There was always rags to be torn into bandages. There were always herbs to be pounded into powder and bottles to be labeled and plants to be watered. While everyone else was out in the village, doing new, interesting things and meeting new people, Lina was stuck doing housework. One day, she asked the doctor if there was any extra paper she could use for drawing. There wasn't, the doctor said, but if she could find blank pages at the back of books, she could use those. So Lina tore out 8 blank pages. The doctor gave her a pencil and she began drawing whenever she had a few minutes of free time. Out of habit, she drew the city she had always drawn. She hardly knew how to draw anything else. But she thought that since she was here in the real world, she should be able to imagine the city much better now than before. She remembered the first drawing she'd done with her colored pencils back in Ember, when she'd made the sky blue instead of its normal black. She had thought it was just an imaginary thing, a little crazy to draw a blue sky, but now look, the sky really was blue. She must have known it somehow in some secret place in her mind. Something in her was a little bit magic. Maybe she could see beyond what was right in front of her eyes to things that used to be or things that could be in the future. So she shut her eyes and tried to look deep into her imagination. But the old version of the city, the one she'd drawn so many times, seemed to be stamped inside her eyelids. She kept drawing the same thing, the tall buildings, the lighted windows. She added a few extras, some trees, a couple of trucks with their oxen, a chicken, but didn't look quite right. Would the buildings be taller than the trees? How much taller? Would there be chickens in the city? She felt discouraged. So she set aside her drawings, her city drawings, and tried to draw what she saw around her. She drew the lemon tree outside the doctor's back door. She drew her bike. She drew the front of the doctor's house and the gate and the grapevine over the door. Once a truck parked a little way up the road to unload some crates, and she dashed out with her paper and pencil and drew the truck and its oxen. But none of these gave her quite the same thrill as drawing the city. There was a feeling that went with drawing the city, a feeling of longing and excitement and mystery. It was as if her drawings of the city were a half-open window, a glimpse of something she couldn't quite see clearly. Torrance sometimes came up behind her when she was drawing and peered over her shoulder. Now and then he would point out some part of the picture that didn't look right, but most of the time he didn't comment at all. He was hopping with impatience these days, waiting for his brother to come home. He'll bring me something. He'll be bringing me something, he said one day. Every time he comes home, he brings me something. He went to the window seat and took his bag of treasures from the cabinet underneath. I'll show you these, he said, if you promise not to touch them. Lina wandered over. She didn't want to appear too interested, since Torn was certainly never interested in anything she did. But she was curious about these prized possessions he'd been hiding. He reached into the bag and took out one thing at a time, placing it carefully on the window ledge. There were 6 things, all different. Lina could not identify a single one of them. Casper brought me these, Torrance said. He lined them up, making tiny adjustments to their positions until he got them just right. They're all extinct. Lina took a step closer and bent down to look. Don't touch them, Torrance cried. I'm not, said Lina irritably. Well, what are they? Torrance pointed to the first thing, which was shaped like a T and made of scratched silver metal. An airplane, Torrance said. It carried people through the air. Oh, come on, said Lina. It's not even a foot long. Real airplanes did, Torrance said. This is just a model of a real airplane. He pointed to the next one. A tank, he said. It runs over people and crushes them. What's the point of that? Lina asked. Torrance sighed at Lina's stupidity. It's for fighting enemies, he said. The next thing looked like a short, chubby bike. Motorcycle, said Torrance. It goes really fast. Then came a battered silver tube. Flashlight. You push this button and light comes out. Show me, Lina said. It doesn't work, said Torrance. I told you, all these are extinct. The next thing was a black rectangle with rows of small colored buttons. Remote, said Torrance. What's it for? It makes things happen when you press the buttons. What kinds of things? Just things, said Torrance. I don't know. It's very technical. The last thing was different from all the rest. It seemed to be an animal made of some stiff grayish material. It stood about 10 inches high on 4 thick feet. Elephant, said Torrance. As tall as a house. Tall as a house? Lina tried to imagine it. You mean if I stood next to one, I'd only come up to here? She pointed at the creature's knee. Torrance swatted her hand away. It was the biggest animal on Earth, he said. If it wrapped its nose around you, you would die. I'd love to see one, Lina said. You can't. There aren't any anymore. Torrance spread his arms out, hiding his treasures from view. You have to go away now, he said. You only get one look. So Lina went out into the courtyard and picked a few green grapes, which turned out to be much too hard and sour to eat. Through the window, she could see Torrance moving the tank and the motorcycle toward each other, and she could hear him making growling and crashing noises. What must the ancient world have been like, she wondered, with all these strange things moving around it? Was it wonderful or terrible? One afternoon, when Lina was in the village picking up some salt for the doctor, she saw a long line of people at a clothing shop. A few Emberites were among them. Lizzie was in the line, wearing the black scarf around her neck that she'd worn ever since she arrived, to show that she was mourning for Looper, her boyfriend back in Ember. Why are all these people here? Lina asked. They have eyeglasses, Lizzie said. A roamer brought in a special load of them yesterday. Glasses? But you don't wear glasses. These are dark glasses, Lizzie said. They call them sunglasses. They make it so light doesn't hurt your eyes as much. Most of the people of Sparks already had sunglasses. A couple of the work leaders, understanding how much the light bothered the Emberites' eyes, traded some extra wooden crates for a couple of boxes of the glasses and gave them out for free. Lina tried some on, but didn't like them because they made all the green look brownish. She also thought they made people look sneaky, as if they had evil secret plans. Lina liked going to the market plaza. It was always alive with people and animals, and the markets had things she'd never seen before. Sandals made of old truck tires, hats and baskets woven of straw. It was a noisy, bustling, interesting place. It was also very messy. The animals made the mess. Goats and oxen pulling carts in from the fields left their big smelly plops all over. These got cleaned up eventually. Someone came and scraped them into buckets and took them away. But often this didn't happen until halfway through the morning, and people had to step carefully until then and breathe in that powerful smell. This gave Lina a good idea. She would do a favor for the marketplace, she decided. Everyone would appreciate it. I'm going to read that part again. What do you think she's going to do? Why would people appreciate it? Let's read this again. So remember, there's all these animal plops all over the streets. They didn't get cleaned up till later in the morning. This gave Lina a good idea. She would do a favor for the marketplace, she decided. Everyone would appreciate it. Pause the video. Come up with a prediction. What's her favor going to be? Okay, I'll keep reading. So the next morning, just at dawn, she rode her bike down to the plaza with a big bucket hanging from the handlebars. She scooped up a load of cow plops and goat plops and dumped it into the river. Back and forth from the plaza to the river she went on, scraping up one smelly, squashy load after another, and when she was just about to dump the last load, one of the shopkeepers arrived. You want to come sit with me? I'm just reading a story to the kids. You want to come sit with me for a little bit? Okay, I'll see you soon. That was Milo. How fun. And when she was just about to dump the last load, one of the shopkeepers arrived. She smiled at him, expecting some words of approval, but instead, his face twisted in rage. "What are you doing?" he shouted. He started running toward her. "Dumping that good stuff in the river?" He seemed unable to believe his eyes. "What is the matter with you?" Good stuff, thought Lina. What was he talking about? He snatched the bucket out of her hand. "You people are..." He stopped. He pressed his lips together and closed his eyes for a moment. "All right," he said in a tight voice. "I suppose you didn't know. This stuff is precious. You do not throw it in the river." Lina took a step backward. She felt as if she'd been slapped. "Oh," she said. "Then what do you do with it?" "It goes out into the fields," the man said. "It goes into the rotten pile. And when it's ready, they dig it into the ground. It's fertilizer. I guess you've never heard of it." "No," said Lina. I didn't know. I'm sorry. I was just trying to be helpful." "The most helpful thing you people could do was to be... well, never mind." He gave Lina a last disgusted look and walked away, leaving her with a half-filled bucket she didn't know what to do with. She carried it out of the village and up the road, and when no one was around, she dumped its contents at the side of a field. It wasn't only Lina who got into this kind of trouble. As she went on, she heard about other people doing or saying the wrong thing and irritating the people of Sparks. Sometimes it was because they seemed stupid. People from Ember were frightened by chickens, had never seen a cloud, and didn't know the meaning of ordinary words like storm and forest and cat and lemon. They knew nothing about history. They'd never heard of other countries. They didn't even know that the earth was round like a ball. To the villagers, they seemed unbelievably dumb. On the other hand, they sometimes acted a bit superior, boasting of the things they'd had in their underground city. The villagers didn't like hearing that in Ember, people had electric lights and flush toilets and hot and cold running water. Once, when Lister Monk, who had been the pipework supervisor, was telling a Sparks man about the generator, the man called him a liar. When Lister protested that he was telling the truth and implied that Sparks was a rather backward place compared to Ember, the man hit him. It took 5 people to break up the fight. Worst of all was the ravenous hunger of the Emberites. The village families were pleased that these strangers were so impressed by their fruits and vegetables, but they were also worried. Their leaders had told them the newcomers were to be fed, and all households were being supplied with extra food for the purpose. But the people of Ember never seemed to get full. They cleaned every last crumb off their plates, asked for seconds, finishing those off, and then sat there looking hungry. The villagers resented it. Lina sometimes overheard them talking in the markets. "It's too much to ask," she heard a woman grumbling. "And these cave people are gonna be here nearly 5 more months? Am I gonna have to give them some of my strawberry crop? I don't see why I should. And another woman was even more direct. I wish they'd just get out, she said. It's hard enough to feed your own family, much less a bunch of strangers. Lina wasn't used to feeling unwanted. She didn't like it. There were plenty of things about this place she didn't like. The dust that coated her feet and legs, for instance, turning them a yellowish brown. The tiny bugs that bit her and made red itchy spots on her arms. The way the sun burned the back of her neck. This place wasn't so perfect. She wanted to tell those crabby villagers. In Ember, for instance, they didn't have so many mean, snotty people as they did here. So again, thinking of some of those connections that you're thinking of or coming to your mind or that remind you of something. Lina sometimes rode down to the Pioneer Hotel to see Dune. He always seemed glad to see her, but it wasn't the same as it had been back in Ember, when they were involved in the desperate search for a way out of their doomed city. Dune showed her around the Pioneer, and he told her about the work he did, and the people he ate his lunch with. But he seemed distracted, or troubled, as if he was trying to solve a problem that he wasn't telling her about. Lina would ride back to the doctor's house after these visits, with thoughts struggling against each other in her mind. She missed the old Dune, her clever, adventurous partner, and she herself felt different here too. She didn't know what to do or how to be. Some of the people were trying to be kind, but there was so much unkindness mixed in with the kindness. To the people of Sparks, the people of Ember were just a nuisance. How could they stay in a place where they weren't wanted? This world was huge. There must be another place in it for the people of Ember. Okay. So it gives you maybe a little prediction, a little foreshadowing, that last little part of the chapter there. So again, in your slides, I want you to write down one or two of the most important parts of this chapter. And I want you to think about some connections that you thought of when you read something, or when I read something and you heard it and it made you think of something in your own life, or maybe a way that you act or something that you would have done. Those are all connections. So think of a couple connections, some important parts. If you drew a picture to go along with it, you're more than welcome to take a picture of it and then put it in the slideshow. Other than that, bye. I'll put some quiet music on